Hey guys! First of all, let me apologize for this horrific lighting situation that I have going on. I'm filming at night, which I usually don't like to do just because this electric light does me no favors at all, but it's the only time that I had to film today and I really wanted to get this video out, so I hope you guys don't mind. Okay, so today I want to talk about teaching quiet classrooms. And the reason that I'm talking about it is because when I first started teaching, I found quiet classrooms to be the most intimidating thing ever. I think that's the way that it goes for a lot of new teachers because I feel like energetic and Genki classrooms are super easily lovable and kind of immediately charming, but quiet classrooms take a bit more getting used to, in my opinion. But there are some really easy modifications and just ways that you can treat quiet classrooms slightly differently to make them respond better and to make sure that you have a better time teaching them. And now that I've started to learn those after 3 years, which is way too long, I've definitely started to enjoy quiet classrooms much more. And in fact, some of my favorite classrooms now are the quietest ones. So today I want to talk about some modifications that you can make to games or lesson plans that will accommodate quieter students, and also just some general ways that you can treat quiet classes a little differently from the louder ones that might help you out. Of course, I'm by no means an expert. I've been an assistant language teacher for 3 years only, which, I mean, it's not that long. And so this is only from my limited knowledge. But I'm hoping that if you're a new teacher, this can help get your learning curve started on the right track. Because for me, it took like embarrassingly long for me to get used to quiet classrooms. So I'm hoping this can help you start a little earlier than I did. So let's go. The first thing I want to talk about is making sure that you're giving your quiet classrooms enough time to think and write down their answers before you're asking them to volunteer and say their answers out loud for the class. So one of the first mistakes that I made was the first classes that I visited were very energetic and very loud, very bubbly, and when I would ask a question, I would almost immediately get 4 or 5, sometimes a lot more than that, hands in the air ready to answer the question. And that's fantastic. That's what Genki classes are like. They're amazing like that. But this isn't the same for quiet classrooms. So what you want to do is ask your question or set out your activity, and then instead of waiting for volunteers immediately, just say, okay, you have say 5 or even like 2 or 3 minutes to think and write down your answers, and then you can come back to people and ask them to say their answers. The thing about quiet students is that often they're very, very scared of getting the answer wrong, especially when speaking in front of their classmates, because often they're super shy as well. And so the idea of standing up and saying something in front of the class is already intimidating, and it's only compounded by the fact that they're worried they might have the answer wrong. So you want to make sure that they've had time to think and word out their answer exactly the way that they want to, and be very sure that they're correct, and then you can ask them for volunteers. Sometimes you still might not get volunteers, but this greatly, greatly increases your chances of having at least one hand up in the air when you ask for some answers. So yeah, always give just a little bit of writing and thinking time to your quiet classes. The next thing kind of ties into that first thing, and that is don't wait for volunteers, but also try not to put these kids on the spot too much. This is kind of a hard balance to find, so I'll try to explain what I mean a little bit better. So of course, volunteers in quiet classrooms are rare, but you may get some quiet classrooms with a few very brave or louder kids who volunteer to answer every question. And that's fantastic a couple of times, but you really don't want these same kids answering over and over again every single time, right? Like you definitely want to make sure that you're giving the other students a chance and just making sure to get them out of their shell a little bit, and especially if they're getting the answers right, you want to praise them and make sure that everyone knows that, that they're very clever. So the thing about not putting them on the spot is also really important. I mentioned before that a lot of the time these kids are really scared of getting the answer wrong, so what I suggest for this is during the thinking and writing time, take the time to walk up and down the desks and check on students' answers and what they're writing down. Make sure that you find someone who has a really good answer and remember who they are and tell them, oh, you've got this exactly right, that's fantastic. And then when it's time to call on someone, ignore the few brave kids if they've bothered volunteering this time and call on this kid because you've already told them they have the answer exactly right. And usually when you ask these shy kids to say something, they will. It's just that they won't put their hand up for it. And then make sure that you give them, of course, the appropriate positive confirmation that they've got it right, maybe a sticker or whatever kind of reward system you're using. But yeah, I think it's really important to Make sure that you're not using the same volunteers over and over. It's very, very easy to do in these classes, and it's also important to make sure that you're not terrifying these poor quiet kids by being like, you answer the question right now. So you got to make sure that you're giving them that positive reinforcement each time that, like, yes, this is the right answer, and then you can call on that person. They already know that they've got it right, so they don't have to be quite so nervous. So yeah, don't put people on the spot because they're too shy for that. That would just be cruel. But also try to make sure that more than a couple of kids volunteer and get to answer questions each class. Okay, the third thing is a really easy modification to almost any lesson plan that I absolutely love, and that is group or pair work. So in super energetic or noisy classes, group work can be a bit of a dangerous thing because often they'll get out of control and super noisy, and it can just be a bit of a problem. So often in energetic classes, I try to keep the group work to a minimum. If I have to use groups, I make it only pairs, and I make sure that I choose the pairs so that they don't end up just going together with like the two noisiest boys in the classroom just screaming at each other. But for quiet classes, group and pair work is fantastic because often these students will be too shy to share their ideas in front of the entire class, but very happy to share it within a group of people that they know and like. So often I even let them choose their own groups, their own pairs, whoever they want to work with, which is another way to make sure that they get a group that they're comfortable with and that they can share their ideas with freely. So again, this is a really easy way to modify pretty much any lesson plan that you have. Just make their solo work into group work. You can also appoint a group leader. So make the group elect someone to be their leader who will end up being the spokesperson, which means that usually the groups will elect the most confident person to speak for them, and so that kind of saves the other kids from having to speak, but they still get to contribute their ideas. So yeah, group work is fantastic. It is a lifesaver in quiet classrooms. I recommend doing pretty much every lesson that you possibly can. Just chuck in some group work. It's wonderful. Okay, number 4, prioritize one-on-one time when you can. This is something that quiet classes are fantastic for as well, because in the louder classes, often you'll have to keep things moving really quickly and go from one activity to the next, to the next, to the next, without really much time to walk around and speak one-on-one with your students. But in quiet classes, often you have more thinking time, more writing time for them, and this is a great opportunity to just walk up and down the desks and see how everyone's doing. Especially making yourself available by walking by the student's desk is a really good way to get them to ask for help if they need it. Because I found in quiet classes, often they won't put their hands up if they need help or call you over, but if you're walking past their desk, they might just be like, hey, sensei, help me, which is fantastic because that way you get to actually talk to them and interact with them and give them that positive reinforcement. I find especially for the really, really shy students who almost never speak in class, this is great because you can tell them that they're doing a good job because you get to actually see their work despite the fact that they never volunteer to answer questions. So you never hear their work, but you get to look at it this way and tell them that they're doing a great job. So yeah, make sure that you're prioritizing one-on-one time where you can. Make sure you're making yourself available to the students. So don't wait for them to call you over, go over to them and just have a look at what they're doing. So yeah, one-on-one time, it's something that you often can't do in loud classes that quiet classes are great for. So my last point is just going to be about games, because when I first started teaching quiet classrooms, games were awful. The games that had been such a huge hit with my noisy, energetic classrooms that they'd absolutely loved were just terrible in my quiet classrooms. So what I've learned from that is a few things. Number 1, steer clear of very competitive solo one-on-one kind of games. Those don't work. The students don't really enjoy them because no one in a quiet class really likes to be the center of attention or have the spotlight on them. So games that I really love, like Classroom Pictionary or charades, are just awful because not only do the students not want to stand at the front and draw the thing on the board or act out the thing, also because it's a quiet classroom, a lot of the time no one will volunteer the answer, so they just have to keep going forever, and it's mortifying. It's just bad. So don't try those games. What I would recommend is group-focused games, and especially games where they can write down the answers instead of saying them. So I have 2 particular favorite games for quiet classes. The first one is Shiritori, or Word Snake, and that is where a group of students gets a big sheet of paper and they write like a trail of words on it that looks like a snake, obviously, and the previous word, the last letter of the previous word will be the first letter of the next word. So for example, I, E-Y-E, and then ear, E-A-R, and then like rent, R-E-N-T. So stuff like that. So the students get a set amount of time. I usually do about 3 minutes, and the group with the most words at the end of that wins. So that's a really easy one. They don't have to be the center of attention, they don't have to say very much, but they get to work in groups and they get to see, I usually write up how many words each group got at the end so they can see like how far off they were and like how well the best group did and all that stuff. And the other game that I really love for quiet classes is bingo. So you make a bingo card, obviously. My favorite way to do this is to theme bingo cards. So I usually have like a food one, a drinks one, an animals one, that kind of thing. And you give the students like 3 or 5 minutes to fill out each bingo card, and then you play bingo. And the only thing they have to do is say bingo when they have a line, and that's all they have to do, and it's fantastic. It usually works really well. It's not group focused, although you can play it in pairs with the really shy students, and I find that that works really well for them as well. So yeah, be careful with games. Trial and error is, I think, the best way to do it, and please don't get discouraged if some games don't work, because honestly, games were hard to figure out with quiet classrooms. But yeah, this is what I've learned so far. I hope to keep learning. If anyone has any other great games for quiet classes, please leave them in the comments below, because I'm always looking for more ideas. But yeah, honestly, trial and error. Once you figure out a few games that you really like for noisy classes and a few games that you really like for quiet classes, you can just reuse them in different formats over and over, which is fantastic. So yeah, that's games. Games are a rough one for me still, I'm going to be honest. I have my 2 that I really love, but I wish I could play Pictionary with them. I just love Pictionary so much. Yeah, anyway, that's the last one, games. Okay, that's about it for my tips on teaching quiet classrooms. I really hope that if you're a new teacher, this has given you some ideas that you might be able to use. If you have any more questions, or better yet, if you have any more advice on teaching quiet classrooms, please leave it in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. I will be making a video like this about loud or energetic classes, because while I think that they are more immediately charming or endearing, I do think they also pose their own set of issues that need to be addressed. So that'll be coming out soon-ish, I hope. Apart from that, I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you later. Bye!